Good afternoon, everyone. I am Sulakshna, host for this webinar on behalf of Wadhwani Foundation National Entrepreneurship Network. As we begin the session, I would like to take you through the phenomenal job the WFNEN is doing in supporting startups, early stage and growth stage entrepreneurs and SMEs to grow their business. They provide a great free mentoring and learning platform to those who come and register at wfnen.org and connect them to experienced and expert mentors along with Investor Connects. The mechanism is a very straightforward approach with goal-based, time-bound and structured mentoring. Enrich yourself connecting to 400 plus mentors from various fields of work and make a difference. As we begin, I am so pleased to be with you and to have the chance to introduce our speaker, Mr. Mojave Sharma. Mojave is a serial entrepreneur and part of umpteen businesses and social organizations. He exudes passion in angel investing, leadership and mentoring. He has in this last 29 years successfully founded or co-founded many startups including Oscar Expo Design, Swishin Events, Jaipur Kalin, Rain, Mata Media, Art Summit, Club Connect to name a few. In the past, he has also been with Jaipur Virasat Foundation in various roles and as president of Rajasthan Carpet Manufacturers and Exporters Association. By being the founder member of TIE Rajasthan and the past president, he has promoted the values of TIE and entrepreneurship in Rajasthan. He has been global trustee for 4 years from 2011 to 2014 and now re-elected for another 2 years starting January 2017. He has not only represented Rajasthan but also India on world's largest non-profit that promotes entrepreneurship. Request participants to mute audio appliances. After the presentation, we would have a discussion session for around 20 minutes where Mahavir would answer your questions. So please send me relevant questions over chat, which would be answered at the end of the session. I would love to hear your feedback on today's session. Your input and suggestions for future sessions are invaluable to me. So please leave your feedback on the board. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Mahavir. Over to you, Mahavir.
Hi, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everyone, from wherever you're logging in. I'm pretty happy and honored to be part of this webinar, and I hope that all of you take away something from this conversation and discussions that follow. So I made just a couple of slides, but they're quite elaborate points which I would elaborate on in the next 35 to 40 minutes. The first point, that all of us need to understand from a pre-Series A or a Series A is when is it that one is ready to be, going for a pre-Series A or a Series A funding? Is it when you need money or you've run out of your previous money? Is it when you're ready for that kind of a growth or that situation where you can pitch to people who fund in Series A or pre-Series A? So the answer is both yes and no. You should not preempt to look for investors if you are not ready to strategize and grow in multiple cities, multiple geographies, or multiple domains. If you are in a situation where you have run out of money and yet your growth is not that it has to grow from whatever geography or domain that you're in to multiple domains, in my opinion, you're not ready for a pre-Series A or a Series A. You need to get a bridge loan, you need to get a bridge funding, and you need to start and wait until you reach a point where you have clearly shown dominance in your local market or dominance in the domain that you're in. So let's say if you are in hyperlocal, so you are in a city like Mumbai, you have to be the leader in Mumbai. You have to be the leader in that domain or that vertical of hyperlocal. If you're not the leader locally or in your domain, I don't think that you're ready for Series A or pre-Series A. Because the fact that you are going for Series A or pre-Series A funding is that you have proof of concept, you've proved that there is huge potential in the local market that you're in, and now you're ready for other cities or other countries or to expand to other products and other deliveries. So that is what is the first and foremost thing. The other most important thing is that if you are not growing week on week or month on month or year on year, there is something definitely wrong with your model. And if the growth is not vertical in the local domain that you're in, your projections for other cities or other countries or other products will have to be curtailed beyond a point, because after a point there is no growth in a certain market. So you have to continue to show this growth, and this growth should exist from when you start to pitch to when you start to get the money. And there is a time lapse of at least 3 to 6 months, if not more, because raising money is in a job in itself. And I personally think that the problem with most startups face is that they cease to grow during the fundraising period, and when they are looking at when they are being reevaluated, when there's diligence happening, whether there is other audits happening, the growth slows down, and the investors then try and stay away, or then try and negotiate on the valuation or on the investment that you might need, and they start to doubt the growth story that you might have. So it's not a great idea to do that. So you really have to stay focused, know when you need to pitch to a pre-series A or a series A investor, know when your growth will last you for the next 6 months with the funds that you have. That's when you start to, so not any sooner, not any later. If you're going to run out of money in the next 3 months, you are 3 months too late. Then you might as well take a bridge loan from your existing investors, or go back to some other angels where you say that you will take money and you will give them 20, 25, 30% off on the next round at pre-series A. That is the kind of interim funding that you need. But if you feel that you are dominant in the geography, you have 6 months of easy week-on-week, month-on-month growth that you can show with the existing money, and also you are you are actually not needing funds from angels, and you need a huge sum of money and you have to go to other geographies, that is when you need to go to a pre-series A or a series A funder. So that's one thing. So this is the growth issue. Now on the competition. So how do you present to an angel investor once that you have crossed the hurdle of knowing that you are ready for a pre-series A or a series A? Now the biggest challenge is many a times when I have seen pitches being pitched to us, competitors are listed in either in your domain only or your geography only. You have to understand that there are other competitions which are indirect competitions, meaning thereby if there is someone who's doing again, I'll go back to a hyperlocal example. If someone is delivering groceries, they can very easily deliver vegetables and fruits also. They can deliver food also. So if Zomato were to think that only food delivery people were their competition, they have been stumped by Uber Eats. So you have to understand that there are other players in the market which are not your direct competition. So you have to really watch for companies that are in close proximity or have the ability to start to do what you're doing, because they are on the move. They have a back-end delivery, they have a front-end system. So you really have to be very, very clear, because at this stage of Series A nowadays, no one wants to just look at your story. They want to look around and see what are your competitions currently, what could be your potential competition. And these potential competitions are indirect competitions. And I've had arguments from startups saying that they are not a competition. They cannot do this. They're not doing this. They don't have the software ready. Well, all of the back-end stuff, while they're doing, we don't even know what they're doing at the back. So we really need to be ready for a reply. You might not have an answer if someone very big enters a domain that you're in, but at least you should not argue, and you should say, fine, we will have to, then we have an early mover advantage, we have to move fast, we have to do all these things very quickly and very justifiably. The other thing, sometimes people are raising funds for mergers or acquisitions, which is also fine. So even if one of your competitions or one of your close people is in the same or similar domain, you can actually put a caveat that if we are able to raise and negotiate, or we can do a share swap deal, or whatever you want to justify, you really need to be ready with an answer. And especially if there's an acquisition situation, situation that you're thinking of because someone is dominant in another geography, you're dominant in this geography, and the merger would create a synergy and you would grow much better. There's nothing wrong in saying or agreeing to that, and you should always have that option or possibility ready. Now, when you do a projection or a roadmap or a future, planning for the next 3 or 5 years as to where you will be, what will you achieve, etc., etc., and the funds that you need, you really have to be very, very realistic. Sometimes huge projections, just because your valuation is not justified, or just because you need more money and you need to justify those projections, is not a good situation to be in. So you really have to understand that you have to be realistic on what you can achieve. No one will be unhappy if you overachieve. So you really have to be very, very clear and be very realistic, because if you underachieve, not only is your second round of funding or any other sort of funding be jeopardized, but also you will face a cash flow situation, because you will have burnt out all your cash based upon projections that you're trying to achieve. Cost of customer acquisition is very high, and then you will not be able to achieve what you need to achieve, and then it'll be a catch-22 situation for you and for the investors, where they don't know what to do, what projections to believe when they see all your this thing. The other very important thing is, in your projections and your future, there has to be, when I see people doing a pie chart, that this is what they need for HR, this is what they need for technology, this is what they need for other things, you have to keep a lot of money for your back-end and technology and R&D. The fact that we, or as investors, are looking at your company, the fact that we are wanting to invest in your company, is the product and the solution that you have. If your solution stops to evolve, if it stops to imbibe new technologies, if you stop to continue to add these things, we or anyone else will not be interested. So make sure that you fight for your backend, fight for the technology that you have, fight for improving the technology. Otherwise, it's not going to, you can cut down on marketing, you can cut down on sales team, you can cut down on other things, but your backend and your R&D, never compromise. Even if you have to put your foot down, because it's seen from investors' point of view as a company that will grow in the future, diversify, would be ready to pivot, would be ready to adapt new markets and new things. So what I strongly recommend is that your projections should never cease to be unrealistic. Your projections should always have your backend, your technology, your R&D in place, and the most important things, your cost of customer acquisition should be as low as possible. Obviously, I don't need to tell any one of you that these days, in your projections or in your HR or in your sales and marketing, divided by whatever you spend in the next 1 year, divided by where you will be in the customer sphere or revenue paying customers, you have to understand that your cost of customer acquisition has to be as low as possible, and it should be reducing as you grow rather than stagnant or staying a constant. So if earlier on at early stage or idea stage, your cost of customer acquisition was 100 rupees, it should now be less than 1 rupees when you go to pre-series A or giving projections for pre-series A kind of funding. So you really have to be at least a 100th or 150th, a huge margin in terms of cost, because if your product is not viral, if your product is not grown in a city or a domain virally, there is no way that you will be able to achieve your projections, and then again there will be doubts on your projections. And the biggest challenge that all of us face, all of the startups face, is that they don't see what the projections and where they want to achieve. What they see is how much money do they need to grow. What they see is, now to achieve this money of, let's say, 500,000 or 1 million, they need to only give 10% equity out. So our company should be, valued at 10 million, 8 million. They don't realize, and then they work the figures of targets of customers achieved so that they can justify the valuation of 5 million, 10 million. And that's where the problem arises, because once A, you are unrealistic, B, you end up being in a situation where you have raised more money, or you're in, in a negotiation stage, or you're being negotiated with both on valuation or the money needed, and you get into a situation where everything then starts to fall off, whether in the initial stage, or if the funding is about to come in series, or after having achieved some targets, you will not be able to achieve those targets. Realistically, you will have to, you'll end up spending more money, your cost of acquisition will go up, so everything then will start to go haywire. So this is very, very important. When you do your projections, be realistic, be focused, see what you can do. It should have some semblance to what has happened in your field or domain. It should have some semblance to your past. It cannot be very multiple or very huge. Now, funds needed or deployment and cash flow. So as I said, your funds needed also has to match what you actually need. You have to continue to, in my opinion, getting pre-series A or series A of funding is not your ticket to stardom or your ticket to having achieved success, and you stop being a bootstrapped company. You stop being very wise and intelligent in where you need to spend your money. You really have to continue to behave that way. You can't have 10x growth in your salaries. You cannot have all that. There's no exit happening for angels. There's no exit happening for any of you. So you really, really need to understand that you have to be very realistic on the money that you need. If you're not realistic on the money or you need, and you will have to justify your valuation. So never ever equate the money that you need and your valuation in the same goal. They should never achieve or reach one should not be reached from the other. What basically I mean is that if you need 100,000 and then you should not say I can't give more than 10%, so my value should be 1 million. No, the valuation should reach based upon the realistic projections, based upon what the other companies in your domain are, where you will be a year or two down the road, and that should be arrived separately. Funds needed, as I said, you should be realistic, you should be bootstrapped, you should be focused on how much money do you need in the next year or two, and that's how your funds needed. Now, when you've reached these two numbers separately, now you see if the equity going is too much or equity going is too less. I mean, obviously the best situation is when the valuation comes very high, funds needed are less, and you're giving 2-3% of equity. Great situation. But if you are in a situation where you're having to give more equity because you actually need more money, then you have to revisit your cost of customer acquisition. You have to revisit your HR, rather than hiring people and firing people, which other people or many people have done. I recommend that you gradually grow, you be very focused and have minimal people or minimum stuff. Otherwise, it will be counterproductive. It will not be good for you, for the company. And as you very well know, that your exit is not happening within another 4 to 5 years. So you really need to grow this company, make it profitable, make it a situation where you and everyone else and the investors make money and have a good exit. So you really have to work on these two numbers. This thing. The other major problem or the major mistake that most startups do is on cash flow. Now, sometimes when you calculate the money required and you do all the projections, the cash flow required is sometimes not matching. The cash flow required should be the peak deficit that you will ever be at. So if you are a company, so let's take an example. Let's say a company with a burn rate, and then we'll take an example without a burn rate, a profitable company. So if you have a burn rate, so let's say a cash flow does not mean that if you have a burn rate of 200,000 for 2 years, your cash flow requirement will be 2,400,000. No, it's not. It's 200,000 today. After you get funding, it will gradually be 100,000. Then you will be cash flow positive a year and a half, and your fund requirement will be whatever that number adds up to. No, the cash flow requirement is the maximum money that you will have need at any given point of time, because sometimes when you have projections and you have a freemium model, or when you have money coming in late, when it's a B2B situation, when schools and colleges pay quarterly, whatever might be the situation, you really have to look at a cash flow again in a different perspective. It's not just the maths of adding the burn that you have or will have in the next 2 to 3 years. It actually means that when is the peak of the money that you will need, and you should have that money. Otherwise, you will have a dip in that month, and that will where the problem will arise. Now, if the company is obviously cash flow positive, is making money, and then suddenly you need to expand to other domains, you need to expand, but for that expansion you need money, then obviously all the capital, all the working capital required, all the other equipments that might be needed, hardware, software, that added up into the multiple city domains. Would it be gradual? Would it be 10 cities at the same time? All those multiples have to be realistically calculated, and a cash flow has to be projected, and that's the kind of money that you need to deploy. If you feel that, and if you're left with extra cash, or if you're left with extra money and you've saved money, at the end of the day, or post pre-series A, when you go for series B, that will always be seen as an advantage. You might not even have to go to series B, and you might just grow organically from own things. So it's very, very important that you look at the cash flow very, very carefully. I have seen companies do very well, have the potential of doing well, but they run into cash flow problems, and then they suddenly start to lose traction, and the funders get wary because the month-on-month, year-on-year, week-on-week growth is not happening. So that's when everything works backwards. So I really recommend that you have to have that. I mean, while we're talking on cash flow and burn, I mean, these days, obviously, everyone needs to have a very realistic program and if planning projections. And quite honestly, burn or having a huge burn is not something that is seen as a positive. You really have to have, by the time you reach Series A, should not have a burn, because you should have curtailed your geography or the products that you're dealing in, and try and be cash flow positive. So actually, the best thing is to not have a burn, to be successful and cash flow positive in whatever field or domain you are in, by being the leader. But if you do have a burn rate for any reason, because if you are in a field or a vertical which obviously has no revenue but is a huge impact, social or otherwise, then you have to have a pure justification on burn rate and the impact that burn rate is making, and how continuing to have more burn rate in the next year or two will make a much bigger impact to the business or to whatever domain that you're in. So you be very, very careful with the burn rate. I have also seen companies or ideas that were new, that were critical at early stage or idea stage, that were funded, because obviously they would not have succeeded or not have germinated if funding at early stage was not achieved. And startups in that time or era, not knowing enough, have created a situation where they've given away too much equity. They've almost touched 50% before they hit pre-series A or series A, because A, they could not justify valuation, B, the idea was totally new, the domain was new, there was no revenue, and so now is also a time where I have started to see, and I recommend startups, before you go to a pre-series A or series A or professionally, this is when you go to a professionally managed fund, you really need, and you move away from individual angels or small angel funds, you have an opportunity to restructure your company. When I say restructuring your company, and basically means that for the same amount of money, or for a little more money, if you can look at the equity being diluted of the early stage investors, it's not a bad idea. So for example, angels are holding 45% equity in a company that's 10 crore valuation. Now suddenly you need another 5 crores, and now you're valued at 20 crores or 25 crores. Now the situation that will arise is that now if you have to give 25% to get 25% for a 20 crore valuation, you will have let go of 70% of equity. Now this is not a healthy sign. A Series A or pre-Series A would not want your equity to go down to 30%. They would not want the angels to cash out at 45 and go down to 30 and make profit. They would want, all the angels would want to stay. So they would now tell you that, you know, you have given away too much of an equity, and you would not fund, or you should not be funded, or you should not either look at restructuring, or you should try and achieve more targets so that your valuation is more than 20 crores, reaches 50 crores, so you can give only 10%. So those kind of situations will arise. I mean, everyone will believe in what you're doing. Everyone will believe in the idea that you have, but the funding will not happen because they will not let the angels go. They will not give you, take 25% equity and leave you with 30% or less equity at pre-Series A or Series A. So you really need to go back to your angels and say, now we were 10 crores. Now we are trying to structure our company to a 20 crore valuation or 25 crore valuation. Even if you were to go down from 45 to 35%, and at the same amount of money, your capital, with the valuation, once it's endorsed, your valuation will increase from 10 crore, or your investments will increase to, the valuation would be now 15 crores instead. So they get to gain. But if you have this in your hand while you're approaching pre-Series A or Series A companies, it is not a bad idea to do, because this is when you can do it. After pre-Series A or Series A, you will not be able to do it. Then you really need to show much more growth and high 5x 10x growth in valuation for you to justify further rounds of funding. Otherwise you will not be able to get funding or continue to dilute, because no one these days would want angels to exit or leave, or even investors VCs who've invested at pre-Series A or Series A to leave. So please think of this thing. If you have given away too much of equity for whatever reasons, right or wrong, it's not a bad idea to restructure your company also. Now the next point is obviously the team. The fact that you received early stage, idea stage funding is because you're a great team. You've reached where you have reached at the pinnacle of your domain or your geography because you've been working well as a team of co-founders. You really need to have great angels. Even when you've already had angels or advisors on board, make sure that they have very critical domain knowledge. Make sure that they are strong in where they are, because their names on the team add to your existing value to the company, and it does surely justify to a Series A investor when you have some people who are committed, who have equity, some equity or no equity, but they're on board and they're actually advising, they're actually hands-on helping you out. So please make sure that you enhance your team, whether by hiring them or by having them as angels and advisors, and not just go after the money if you are still not, if you are an early stage or idea stage and listening to this. So make sure, all this planning has to start pretty early. Lastly, on what you need to be ready for is an exit strategy for a VC. Where would you see your company to be? Whether you are in a situation where you will be acquired, whether you're in a situation will be merged, whether you're in a situation will become so cash flow positive that it'll be a profitable company. Whatever that might be, you really have to lead the Series A funder not to Series B funding situation, but to a situation where he would be happy with the investment that he's made, where he would probably exit in 5 years, where you would continue to grow as a company and not leave the company. So your exit strategy has to be very, 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 very clear. Many a times, investors pitch questions or ask questions where they're seeking to understand how sure you are about your plan, how sure you're about your path. sometimes, you have to be firm and, committed that this is what you have achieved and this is what you will achieve. But there's nothing wrong in trying to be understanding and seeing that if there is a need, we might pivot. And there's nothing wrong in pivoting. Many companies have pivoted, and even if you have to pivot, so be it. So quite honestly, be receptive when you are pitching. Be receptive to suggestions and questions. Sometimes they're trick questions, sometimes they're genuine questions and suggestions. Be ready with whatever you feel. If pivoting is the call of the day and it does make sense to you at that point, there's nothing wrong in agreeing to it, that's not a bad idea, but we'll have to rework on it. So please be open-minded as a team, not be stiff or stubborn that you will not pivot. Also, the biggest question that is asked, or biggest things that do happen, is when you don't get funding at pre-Series A level, or you don't get enough funding, the funding that you are trying to seek, and you get lesser funding because the people have not agreed to the valuation that you're trying to pitch. So be ready as a team with a backup plan, a bootstrap plan, a lesser funding plan, an organic growth plan, a lie low plan, a bridge loan or a term loan plan. So your existing investors should be reinvesting, willing to reinvest, should be willing to give you a bridge loan. You should have a backup in terms of funding. Otherwise, it will not show good on whatever you do. So I strongly recommend that as a team, you should have thought through this process and be ready to do that. Now, quickly in the next 10 minutes, I'll try and wrap up what not to do. What, in my observation, what people have ended up doing. Most of it I might have touched in what to do, and obviously if you're not doing what I've told you to do, obviously not to do the other things. So the basic thing is, many a times people start to raise money when they don't need. Be careful. You actually, if you don't need money, you don't need money. If you don't need money of a larger sum, but you need kind of an outside endorsement from a firm or a VC, and you need to take a token funding, because that's way, or you get people on board who will help you grow from that stage. There's nothing wrong in raising money, but be very, very realistic to how much money do you need. I've touched this topic of overvaluation and equity. Please don't arrive at any of these from the other thing. Money that you need and the valuation that you are should not be arrived from one or the other. They should be arrived separately, because they are not related. Because if they were related, then it amounts to fabrication, it amounts to exaggeration, and sooner or later VCs or angels will catch you, because you will not have answers to justify either the growth, or the expenses, or the cash flow, and somehow you will it will not show well on the company, and you might get into a situation where you might not get funded because of this. So be very careful, and do not value your company assuming that there will be negotiation. Do not value or do not ask for more money because there will be negotiations. Because quite honestly, negotiations on valuation or equity do happen. They will happen, but they do have to happen with a logical reasoning. They just cannot happen. Okay, we love your company, we love everything, we would love to give you 2 million, but your valuation is 10 million. It makes sense, but I think we would give you 2 million if you got 25%. Now, this is not a sabji bhaji purchase kind of a situation where this negotiation happens because I want to get more value for my money. It actually, VCs are very, very clear on the cash flows and other funding. They do their diligence on everything, financial and technical. They would actually be very, very careful in not giving you enough or giving you less. Many a times I've seen VCs tell you that I don't think this is the money, you probably need more money. And you should be ready for a justification why you don't need more money, why this is the path that you're taking, etc., etc. Market size is the funniest slide that I've ever seen on every presentation, no matter what stage they are at. For everything, the world population is not the market size. We have to be very, very realistic. We have to be very, very fair. We have to have parallels in your industry or your domain where the market would be. The entire women population is not the market size for e-commerce, for women's apparel. You have to, bifurcate that into urban, into age group, into purchasing powers prior, into growth, everything. So just don't put a market size because numbers in millions and billions look good. It really shows how badly you have. You've put a slide, and it really shows that while you might have achieved success so far, how unrealistic you are in your projections. And that is where we'll go back to point number 2, where valuation and equity will be doubted upon because you are assuming a market size which does not exist, or which is not easy to achieve, because there is in fact fatigue at times in the market, in whether it's e-commerce, whether it's social media, whether it's education, whatever sector, even medical, rural, there is a lot of fatigue. There is other elements and factors that also play a part. World economies play a part, government policy. So you have to be very, very realistic and take a smaller percentage of a larger market size rather than take all of the market size. Don't over project. I've already told you, be realistic in your projections. It doesn't make sense not to be able to achieve, because many a times funds will not come in one flow. They will come with targets and things. Be careful with what you project. You should not, and I repeat, not change from a bootstrapped model. Times have changed in the last year or two. Being lavish, taking huge salaries, or paying huge salaries, or hiring too many people is not the answer. There have been, all of you are very well aware, there have been so many. You really have to optimize the labor, the HR, your technology, your marketing budgets. Everything has to be so optimized that you really, really get the investor and you really have to see that you're taking huge pains in trying to achieve what targets that you want to achieve with the best value for money. And this is where go backwards into cost of customer acquisition. This is where this will happen, and you really have to continue to be in a bootstrap mode. I've already touched on pivoting or not to pivoting. Please be open-minded. There's nothing wrong in pivoting. You might think of it, investors might think of it, the market might force you to pivot. Be mentally open to it. Many a times when you're pitching to a pre-Series A or a Series A situation, there are existing investments that those funds have already made in, which are in similar or close enough domains. They would want you to do a equity swap, or do a merger, or acquire or get acquired, and they might try to push you in that direction because they want the other company that they might not be doing well, and they want to merge the two companies so that they can justify all of that. They might negotiate on your valuation. They might beat the other company having not achieved the targets. So there's so much going on, and which is right now happening or happened in Flipkart and Snapdeal. So it is quite a possibility at your level of a company. It doesn't have to be that big a company. It can happen. So be ready with being open-minded to all these options that might come your way. Don't just disregard them. Don't just agree to them. Think over it, mull over it, see if it makes sense to you. If it gives you better value, go back to your investors. Take time from these funds to ask them to come back to you, and that is how, or do a common conference call or a meeting between existing investors, and these kinds of multiple pivoting offers that you might get, or which could be a cash equity deal, equity deal, or a just all cash deal. So make sure that you are open-minded. Make sure that you're ready from every point of view, whether it's competition, whether it's your HR, whether it's not your backend, if it's your technology, on your compliances. Another very important thing is compliances. At this stage, your compliances should be on time, should be absolutely immaculate. If there is some sort of variance in that, and it again the companies shy away from those kinds of situations because the trust is a very important element. So I mean, these are the basic things that I think you should be ready with. These are the things that are needed from when you need to go. That's the most important thing. Once you know that you need to be in a pre-series or series A after your early stage investors or angels tell you to, and you feel that you need to grow and the only way to grow is to get more money, that I strongly feel that you need to do and not to do the things that I have elaborated. I'll be happy to answer any questions that any of you might have. Sulakshana, how do you want to take this forward?
Yeah, we will now have a 20 minutes question and answer session. So we would start the discussion soon, and so please send me relevant questions over chat, which would be answered by Mahavir. There is one question coming from Mukesh Nagarajan. He has asked, we have raised 10 lakhs from government loans through NEED scheme in Tamil Nadu. He has not yet completed the question. So, Mukesh, can you just complete the question? So, he is taking this as seed round.
So not relevant. I mean, so what is the question?
So what he is asking is that the next round should be as pre-series A.
No, I don't think after seed round you should not go for pre-series A. You should be looking at an early stage or an angel round. Pre-series A, unless you have a product that has an IP, kind of a situation where it's a non-existing product, then it's a different thing. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense for you to go for pre-series A at this point of time.
Yeah, so he asks whether it should be a pre-series A round or an angel round.
Angel, definitely angel. Unless you have a product that is patentable and IP protected.
So Mukesh, hope that clears your doubt. Request participants to address your questions over the chat. Mahavir RT asks, as an investor himself, what is Mahavir's preferred industries of investment?
So they keep changing every day. So I don't know what's preferred at this point, but we are definitely staying out of anything that needs a huge capex or a working capital. So anything that needs a lot of advertisement, that needs a lot of marketing, or it needs lots of HR and manpower, we're staying away from all those domains. Anything that is technology centric, anything that can be leveraged and multiply grown with backend services would be preferred. Anything that can create a huge impact in the lower middle rural India is an impact. Anything that can make impact across countries and geographies is something that we're looking at.
The next question comes from Suraj Singh. He asks, as an early stage startup, how to get the market size, realistic market size, other than what data we get on the web?
So I tried to touch that point. More or less 90% of the presentations I see, the market size is totally warped, and I just overlook that. I mean, I don't even see that slide. You have to be really, first and foremost, you should define the geography. So let's say your pilot or your initial early stage thing is specific to an age, specific to a geography, specific to a financially stable, rural, urban, whatever. So define all the adjectives that one needs to have so that he or she will buy or use your product or service. Once you have that, then you add up that number, and you feel that, assuming that there are other players, other predominant players or equal players, you divide that number equally among all the other people and reduce that number further to know your market size that you will be able to achieve. Because beyond a point, for something that's already a solution that's already existent, growing beyond 10% market share is a challenge. In my opinion, whether there's competition or no competition, whether it's direct or indirect, you have to be very, very low on the markets. You should say total market size. Your target of achieving the market size is 8%, 10%, 15%. It is agreeable and to people if your product and service is right. Otherwise, it will not fly. It will not help you. And you should base your expenses on that market size. You should base your revenue on that market size. You should base your deployment of people on that market size. Anything, or even less, anything, no expense or income should be beyond that number. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense.
Any other questions? Mukesh is asking for your email ID, Mahavir. So if you find it,
you can share my email ID. I don't have a problem.
Okay.
Not the phone
Mukesh,
number, email ID is fine.
Yeah, Mukesh, I'll be sharing with you Mahavir's email ID offline. Request participants to send across questions over chat. Also request you all to put across your experience with the session on the poll that is there on your screens. There is one question coming from Prashant Goel, wherein he writes, we developed medical devices for speech and tinnitus problem. Tinnitus, I don't know. We raised 75 lakh as seed fund. We have sold 36 lakh this year. How we calculate equation of company?
You have saved or you have spent? Can you read that out please again?
Yeah,
so he raised 75 lakhs for...
We raised 75 lakh as seed fund. We have sale of 36 lakh this year. How we calculate equation of company?
You mean valuation?
Prashant, can you come clear about your questions? Yeah, he means valuation.
So is the 75 lakhs used completely, and what was the equity that was given for that 75 lakhs?
He mentions 30.
So if you, so that's what I was saying. Sometimes in the very beginning, you end up giving a lot of equity because you need that money to create a pilot or a product or a whatever. So I personally feel that a 36 lakh sale, and what is the gross profit in the devices that you're selling?
Uh, 80% he mentions.
80% gross profit. And are you making money right now or losing money right now?
Prashant, you can take up the last question Mahavir has asked. Break even, he mentions.
So if you are break even at 80% gross profit, you need to raise more money to market and sell your product, because obviously you have a good product because you're making 80%. I would imagine that I would go for a second round with the existing people who've given you money for seed round, or take a bridge loan and try and run a pilot for 6 months to a year, achieve some tangible sales growth, and then based upon those sales growth, you show projections and go for the next round of funding. So I would just take money for marketing and sales, and that's where I feel you were lacking. As a bridge loan, as a 20% or 25% equity, lower valuation of next round of funding, and show the growth in market and show profit and growth for the 1 year, and then I think you should raise money. Right now you should not try and visit the valuation situation, because you will not be able to justify any valuation for the kind of money that you need at this point.
There is one question coming from Sumit Dubey. We are bootstrapped food tech startup. We wanted to know that how can we get correct valuation of company? We have already completed a sale of 10 lakhs in first 2 months.
So, company valuations are not just based upon sales and profits. Actually, company valuations are based upon competition that you might have, the possibility of growth that you might have, whether you have the ability to grow or not, value at what is the team. Valuations are based on so many other factors. Gone are the days 4-5 years ago when it was 7x of the profit or 3x of the turnover. Those things are not working anymore. It is so many relevant factors that will determine the path or the projections that you will be at. So it's very difficult to give, for me or anyone, to give you a valuation figure. If some product has no competition at all and it's a new product, obviously the valuation is much higher. If there are people already doing it and you're doing something a little different, your valuation will not be as high because there is no growth. I mean, in any service model, any tech startup, you're as good as how many other people are doing it. So it's really difficult. It's really difficult to tell you without understanding the business model. I'll be happy to see this on an email and try and answer your question. Otherwise, it's very difficult to answer that.
We still have time for more questions. Participants request you to send across your questions to Mahavir. So Mahavir, Sumit has also asked for your email ID, and I'll be sharing the same with him.
My email, this Hotmail email, is a good email to share with everyone. I don't have a problem.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
I'm just going to say, do you record this session?
Yes, we record the session.
And is it available online after that?
It is available online.
Okay. So please share a link with me, so I will then share.
Sure. To the participants as well as to the presenter, the link would be shared.
Okay.
There's another question coming from RT. Can you mention 2 or 3 Series A, Series B investors one should know about?
There is a long list, and Google can answer that question very well. There are funds, there are individual VCs. They're all in. I mean, it's huge. It's just they're umpteen from Sequoias of the world to everyone else. There are so many funds that are investing in Series A and pre-Series A. I don't not naming one and naming a few will not help. Google will answer that question much better.
We are almost nearing the end of the session. If you have any questions, please send it across. So Mojave, it seems our participants do not have any more questions to ask.
Great.
So I would conclude this webinar on preparing on Series A funding. It was a pleasure having the webinar with you. I truly
Thank you.
appreciate the way you covered each and every topic in detail and also cleared our doubts on the same. I would like to express my appreciation to the participants on behalf of Wadhwani Foundation NEN for your dedicated participation. And we will be having another webinar shortly. I would like to bring to you another enriching experience. Wish you success in your endeavor. Thank you. I would like to get your votes on the poll. So kindly, before logging off, just send across your ratings on the poll. Thank you.
Thank you.